Alright everyone, we are officially in Oscar season territory as the nominations were just announced this morning, and based on these nominations and what we're about to be in for the 97th Academy Awards that are taking place in March of this year, and we have a lot to look forward to as well. And so in this video, I'm going to break down all of the nominations, tell you guys my predictions about who should win, especially who is snubbed, the biggest snubs of all time, and wow, and just like so much more announced right here as well. So let's get to it. So if you're new, then be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so it's on any future videos, including the Oscar season. But now let's get right into it. And now, so starting off with first things first, the first category announced was the nominees for actor in a supporting role, and those nominees are Yoram Bashirel, Anora, Kieran Culkin, A Real Pain, Edward Norton, A Complete Unknown, Guy Pearce, The Brutalist, and Jeremy Strong, The Apprentice. With my thoughts on these nominees, especially with Edward Norton in A Complete Unknown, which I totally loved, and I think I'm glad that this movie is getting nominated for award season, because especially with Edward Norton, who I enjoyed in that movie, and especially with Jeremy Strong that was in The Apprentice movie alongside Sebastian Stan. But I think, like, if we have to be honest here, I think especially with The Brutalist, that I got an Oscar nomination, and especially if we know the story behind the AI situation that is going on with this movie. But I think A Complete Unknown is definitely deserved for an Oscar nomination, especially for Edward Norton too as well. But Jeremy Strong coming up the heels of Succession and being nominated for an Oscar. And next up is the nominees for the category for costume design, and the nominees are A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Gladiator 2, Nosferatu, and Wicked. And now, especially with this list right here, and oh my gosh, and even with Wicked, that has some of the most awesome production design ever, as it recontextualized the world of Oz, the Emerald City, which I enjoyed the heck out of Wicked because I saw it 2 times in theaters. But especially with Nosferatu, which I really enjoyed, because even with Count Orlok and his costume, and with Bill Skarsgård's voice and his dedication to the role, I thought it was amazing. But especially with Gladiator 2, which I thought it was decent, but it was definitely a good movie with the return to the Colosseum, and with those medieval action sequences, especially as, I mean, those pulled off great performances from Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal. But especially with Gladiator 2 being nominated for this category for costume design, and trust me, I like the costumes that were added into this movie, but especially with Wicked, I gotta give a hand to, because especially with that movie, which I really enjoyed, that they really adapted the Broadway musical adaptation so well for a movie musical like this. So I mean, I gotta give a hand to Wicked. But even with Nosferatu, that movie was an event, but I gotta give it to Wicked, and I hope that it takes home an Oscar this year. Next up is the category and nominations for original score, and the nominees are The Brutalist, Conclave, Amelia Perez, Wicked, and The Wild Robot. And even with my thoughts on this, especially when the nominations were announced this morning, especially with challengers, and that got snubbed hard for an Oscar nomination, because even with that movie, which I truly liked, because especially it was the best sports drama that was like a love triangle with Zendaya, but that score was riveting. But especially for The Wild Robot, which I really enjoyed. I'm glad that an animated film is being nominated for an Oscar like this, because especially if you look at The Wild Robot and its award season nominations, I mean, it was nominated for so many Golden Globes and then never got one. Especially with Wicked, which I really enjoyed, and I liked its score all around. But oh man, I can't believe that Challengers was snubbed of an Oscar nomination. Like I'm like so pissed off. It got snubbed for an Oscar, man. It is truly tragic. But if we're going out here, even with The Brutalist again being nominated for an Oscar, they had to have some type of explanation for the situation. But I gotta give a hand to The Wild Robot for having a great score. And next up is the nominees under the category for original screenplay, and the nominees are Anora, The Brutalist, A Real Pain, September 5th, in The Substance, and wow, seeing The Substance being nominated for an Oscar, which it totally deserves that Oscar nomination, because I truly love The Substance. It's one of the most disturbing and gruesome horror films that I have ever seen, because even though I really loved its script writing, especially with the direction that it was headed in. I mean, the first time I watched it, I was hooked on the edge of my seat the entire time. And I mean, it's really no cool question here. I mean, the substance of being nominated is true, and I hope it really takes home that Oscar for original screenplay. Plus, that movie was the talk online on social media. And now with the next category of nominees is actress in a supporting role, and the nominees are Monica Barbero, A Complete Unknown, Ariana Grande, Wicked, Felicia Jones, The Brutalist, Isabella Rossellini, Conclave, and Zoe Saldana for Amelia Perez. And just based on this alone, it's gotta go to Ariana Grande, because she puts on the most amazing performance as Glinda, because she's been dreaming of this performance for years, for even like a decade now, especially for what she pulls off in Wicked was truly spectacular. I mean, she got the most beautiful singing voice, and seeing her, I believe, like, I mean, come on, she crushed it as Glinda, and for what she delivers to the role, and how she brought Glinda to life in Wicked and in like the world of Oz, and to see that storyline unfold with her character with Alphaba, it is truly spectacular. And plus, this is I think a first time Oscar nomination for Ariana Grande, because you gotta remember she's also a singer too, and with her being nominated for an Oscar, I mean, she totally deserves that role. And I'm hoping that I hope that Wicked gets nominated for an Oscar, because it's gonna be good a reputation, especially for Wicked for Good, that's coming out in November 2025 this year. So if this movie wins an Oscar, people are definitely going to be happy. And Wicked Part 1 is going to be watched around like so many times. But I think Ariana Grande is definitely going to win that Oscar for Best Actress. I mean, let's go, baby. Next up is the nominees in the category for Best Animated Feature Film, and the nominees are Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, and The Wild Robot. And wow, based on these nominations here, I think like between Inside Out 2 and The Wild Robot, I mean, those were two great films, and one of them grossed over $1 billion. But I mean, I gotta give a hand to The Wild Robot, because I mean, that movie was nominated like so many times during award season, and it never got any, because even though like I've seen The Wild Robot, I thought it was a beautiful animated film. It sounds like heartfelt emotions, and it delivers a special message about friendship and bond. Even with Inside Out 2, which was the perfect comeback for Pixar, it did over $1 billion. If you think about it, with that movie, I still resonate with that a lot. It also gives a message about like growing up and like teenagers and stuff like that. But even with the Wild Robot, and I hope it wins an Oscar this year. We never know, because only one can take home that award. But I mean, The Wild Robot from DreamWorks, I mean, it was praised as the best animated film from last year in 2024. Even people are saying that Transformers 1 should got nominated for an Oscar for Best Animated Film. But yeah, I mean, like, out of the Transformers franchise, I mean, some of them were good, some of them were not that great, especially with the Michael Bay films. But even with Transformers 1, that was animated, I mean, even though it was praised as like a very good movie, very good origin story, but trust me, it underperformed so much, and especially as it was aimed towards a younger audience, and especially with adults too. But hey, The Wild Robot definitely deserves an Oscar. And next up is the category of the nominees for production design, and the nominees are The Brutalist, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Nosferatu, and Wicked. Oh my gosh, with these nominations here, out of all these, I feel like, I mean, Wicked has some of the best production design I've ever seen. But even with the Dune Part 2, going back into the world of Arrakis, and what that movie has been, especially has the best VFX work, I mean, the best score. But oh my gosh, like between this, I feel like, I mean, Doom Part 2 should take home that Oscar, because even though the first time I watched it, I praised it as really incredible, as the best cinematography, the best VFX, and I love what Villeneuve's work and his vision was put into the second movie. But even with Wicked, which I really enjoyed a lot, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a big debate online, especially when this content gets out. but I feel like with Doom Part 2 should win, but on the other hand, it's Wicked, but we'll have to wait and see. And next up is the nominees under the category for visual effects, and the nominees are Alien Romulus, Better Man, Doom Part 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Wicked. Especially with Alien Romulus, and that is nominated for an Oscar, which I truly loved, and it was a great film. It was a great return to this franchise, going back to the roots of the earlier entries, especially with the Xenomorph, going back to the space station, bringing back all the chills and all the thrills, all the scares, everything that we love about the Aliens franchise. But even with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes being nominated for an Oscar, I don't look back on it as much, because even with some of the parts that felt a bit dull, it was a start to a brand new trilogy. And also with Doom Part 2, I thought it was really incredible. It has great visual effects, and it has the best, like, everything that they could ever want in like the sci-fi genre. And with Wicked, like that has some of the best VFX work out there. But if we have to agree on this, I think Doom Part 2 is taking home an Oscar for visual effects, because that movie is incredible, and I can't wait to see what they continue with this. And also with a Better Man, that is nominated for an Oscar. I mean, that movie was released around the Christmas time of last year, but I gotta give a hand to Doom Part 2. Next up is the nominations under the category for cinematography, and the nominations are The Brutalist, Doom Part 2, Amelia Perez, Maria, and Nosferatu. And now, with my thoughts on this, because I mean, Doom Part 2 is getting nominated for so many different categories, and I think it should take home all the awards. But even with Amelia Perez, which is a film I think it has Selena Gomez in it, I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna ever watch it, but even with that movie, it's come up like so many times in like award season nominations. But I don't know if that has a chance of winning that. But plus, I think like it won like a Golden Globe under the category for Best Actress or whatever. But even with Nosferatu, which I think is gonna take home that Oscar for the cinematography of what Robert Eggers put into that film, I gotta hand it to you. But I think it's a real challenger, but I think it's gotta go to Nosferatu. Moving on to the big ones, and that is for the nominations under the category for actor in a leading role, and the nominees are Adrian Brody, the Brutalist, Timothée Chalamet, A Complete Unknown, Coleman Domingo, Sing Sing, Ralph Fiennes, Conclave, and Sebastian Stan, The Apprentice. With my thoughts on this, and I mean, I really liked A Complete Unknown for what Timothée Chalamet put into the role, and the biopic of Bob Dylan, and like, oh, it's an Oscar-worthy performance for Chalamet, and he really got put on the spot for I think like a Golden Globe or something like that. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, Timothée Chalamet, an Oscar award-winning like a nominated actor, especially being in like Wonka and Dune, and especially he gives such good performances, especially in the old days. But even with Sebastian Stan, I mean, he is taking home that Oscar because you know that we know him from the MCU as the Winter Soldier, and soon to be in the Thunderbolts movie. But especially with his work outside of Marvel, he really puts his dedication and passion into a performance, into a role, especially what he delivered in A Different Man. I really love his performance in that, because I really like that movie. You know, I watched it recently, but I think it's like deserved, especially with The Apprentice. But as we speak of which, I really hope Sebastian Stan takes home that Oscar for actor in like a leading role. And I mean, I gotta hand you, it's gotta go to Sebastian Stan. But even though that we know him from Marvel and the MCU, but he's gotta win that Oscar. And now, next up is the nominations under the category for actress in a leading role, and the nominees are Cynthia Erivo, Wicked, Carla Sofia Gascon, Amelia Perez, Mikey Madison, Honora, Demi Moore, The Substance, and Fernanda Torres, I'm Still Here. Wow, just based on these nominations alone, and wow, I think it's going to be a real debate with this one. I think with Cynthia Erivo, I mean, she's got to take home that Oscar, represent the character, especially I really loved Wicked, and her performance as Alpha, especially with the song Defying Gravity, which she crushed it in. But even with Demi Moore, she pulls off an amazing performance in The Substance, and I think it's like a real debate of who's taking on that Oscar. But I think Demi Moore is gonna be taking on that Oscar, but even with Cynthia Erivo, I mean, like, she gives an all-star performance. But between this, I mean, I gotta give it to Cynthia Erivo, because even though she was snubbed of a Golden Globe win, but I think she definitely has a shot of take home an Oscar. I mean, Wicked all the way. Next up is the nominations under the category for directing, and the nominees are Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Amelia Perez, and The Substance. Especially out of all these, and even with Denis Villeneuve, who was not nominated for an Oscar for Dune Part 2, that's like the biggest snub ever, because even with, I really enjoyed Dune Part 2, and with Villeneuve and his directorial vision and his style for what he wanted to take, especially with the world of Arrakis, with Paul Atreides, and especially with Chaney, Zendaya's character. But what he delivers in sci-fi was truly breathtaking and incredible. But hey, I'm excited to see The Substance being nominated for an Oscar. I think it's truly gonna do great for when it comes to winning that award. Oh my gosh, I mean, like, especially if Denis Villeneuve was nominated for an Oscar. Oh, I mean, I think the Substance is taking home that award, but I'm so furious that Denis Villeneuve should have been nominated for an Oscar, man. And finally, the nominations for under the category for Best Picture, and the nominees are Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. And whew, wow, this is like going to be a big debate, especially leading to the upcoming days, leading towards the Oscars. Even with A Complete Unknown, which I think they should take home the award, because especially with James Mangold and his direction for what he wanted to take with Bob Dylan, and essentially as like a biopic in the 60s, especially with the Chalamet and what they give to that movie. But even with Dune Part 2, that should take home an Oscar for the Best Picture, because I really enjoyed the heck out of that movie, even though I saw it so many times. But even though the pacing can be a bit dreadful, but it was still an incredible movie with Hans Zimmer's score for Dune Part 2 that was not eligible for an award nomination, especially from the Golden Globes all the way to the Oscars, because it was like a rehash of the first movie. But with Wicked, that's nominated for Best Picture, it's going to take home that award. But I gotta give a hand to Dune Part 2, man. It's gotta take home the Oscar, especially out of all these 10 nominations that will only be one, and guess we're going to wait and find out. But I'm hoping that Dune Part 2 it takes home an Oscar, because this is gonna serve justice, especially to Denis Villeneuve. And so that does it for this year's Oscar nominations, and this year's Academy Awards is on March 2nd, 2025. And especially out of the nominations, that there will only be one who can take home that award. And I'm hoping for some good wins. And even though with some award snubs and that were not in here, but I think it definitely deserves justice. But I mean, I'm talking about Dune Part 2 here and Denis Villeneuve. But I mean, I think the nominations are here. I guess we're about to wait and see until the big night, and that is the Oscars for 2025 as well. But that's going to do it for this video. Just let me know in the comments below, and what are your thoughts on these nominations, and who do you think should have got nominated, the biggest snubs, and who do you think will win that Academy Award? Just let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to know notifications for future videos, and so you can stay tuned for my coverage on the Oscars when it does come in March. And you can follow me on all my social medias or linked down below. And with that, I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.